The other day, someone in the Hytale community, thanks Egotan, sent the trailer for a new game called Bitcraft. At first, it just seemed like a more chill version of Valheim, you know? Just another indie, early access survival crafting game, those are a dime a dozen. But then, at the end of the trailer, I see a new kind of MMORPG. Now this interested me. A Valheim type game on one big open world with hundreds of other people? That sounds alright. So I went to their website to see if they explained it a little more, and they do. And I started reading these little paragraphs and realized, wait a minute, I talked about this exact concept in my Minecraft Factions video. And then I read a little more and thought, wait, I talked about all of these in my Factions video. Is this game just my dream version of Factions out of the blue? I joined their Discord, I looked at everything they said about this game, and I won't say I'm excited just yet, but I am very interested. So, how about we lay out what Bitcraft is, what it wants to be, and then I'll talk about what I want out of Bitcraft. Bitcraft describes itself as a community sandbox MMORPG. Everyone who plays the game is on one big world, which gets even bigger as more people join. Your goal is to set up civilization. You can just create a little settlement and treat it like any other survival sandbox, with a skill system that levels up as you do certain tasks like fishing and mining, but you can also go a lot further with the town building aspect and create actual towns, trade resources with other towns in a completely player-driven economy, and compete with other factions without a focus on direct PvP combat. Bitcraft wants to be a much more social and strategic game, where instead of raiding obsidian cubes to get what you want, like in Minecraft Factions, you communicate with the people who live in an actual functioning town, play the politics, create an empire, take control of the land. This, to me, sounds very cool. You might not be into it, but this is right up my alley. Speaking of that, let's talk about what I'm interested in, what I want to see out of Bitcraft, given how slim the information on the game is right now. Let's start by talking about base building and raiding other bases. Firstly, I want bases to actually look like towns of the time. I don't want there to be one kind of wall you have to build or else you're screwed, like it is in Minecraft Factions. I want towns and bases to actually look like towns. I want to see big kingdoms with stone walls, with functioning farms, homes, and marketplaces within them. With everything being player-driven, I want the towns I visit to feel alive, and I want to feel immersed in the beautiful world the developers have made for us. Now, of everything I'm going to talk about, I'm the least worried about this one, because it isn't nearly as necessary to protect your base, given there's no conferred PvP, and they've said that if they add PvP, they don't want it to hinder any other aspect of the game, so they're being really careful about it. Speaking of PvP though, let's talk about that. Personally, I'd be completely fine if there was PvP in the game, but I am also totally on the side of the developers when they say it can't hinder any other aspect of the game. So, how could we theoretically safely add PvP into the game? Well, first of all, any kind of PvP has to be mutually agreed upon, either through formal declaration of war or something similar. I was originally going to compare the pros and cons of random PvP and mutually agreed PvP, but I really couldn't find any pros to random PvP. It's just not fun to have your base raided while you're offline by someone you didn't even know existed. It's not fun to spend hours traveling to another town with tons of resources on you and then just get mugged and lose everything. Sure, it's realistic, but there has to be concessions made for fun, and I think the best way to make PvP fun in a game like this is to just make it a matter of mutual agreement. No one can kill each other or steal from each other or destroy each other's walls unless they have a formal agreement beforehand. People coming from Minecraft Factions might think that's really unfun, but this game really isn't Minecraft Factions. It's an evolved form of a smaller idea Factions played with but never went far into. This is something that really interests me and may not interest you, and that's okay. So, would it be better if the game had agreed upon PvP or no PvP at all? Well, we could technically let all the competition and rivalries in the game happen through the economy, and that might be cool, but I think the fact that you'd both have to agree before fighting is powerful enough that if it were in the game, PvP wouldn't step on the toes of anything else at all. It would just be a fun supplement to the main game for those that opt into it, and anyone can opt out of it at any time. So I really don't think there would be any downsides to having that system in the game, and my personal opinion is that it should. It would be fun too, after so much time building up a base and a bunch of clan members offering to duke it out with another faction, put your defenses to the test. It's just a bit of fun, and it doesn't break any of the rest of the game, and that's what matters. So, my verdict is yes, PvP should be in the game, but only through mutual agreement beforehand. Now let's put the supplemental PvP aside and talk about the real meat of the game, the economy. I want the economy to be completely player driven. In a lot of faction servers, there's a central administrated shop where you can buy and sell infinite resources. This would make trading with other factions completely unnecessary, and I think they'd be missing out on a really powerful and meaningful dynamic between players. Let me give an example. There are multiple biomes in Bitcraft, right? And I'm assuming every biome has some kind of resource unique to it. Let's say you build your house in a forest and another player builds their house in a nearby desert. Now let's say you need cactus juice to make a potion or whatever, and there are no cactuses in the forest. Would it not be so much cooler if you could trade a sheep or two with the desert players, something they can't normally obtain in the desert, in exchange for a few cactuses? How boring would it be if you just warped over to a communal shop, sold a cup of wheat, and bought some cactuses from a sign? Now that's not to say there shouldn't be player-run shops or even entire player-run marketplaces. In fact, that would be awesome. But if they do exist, they should be few and far between and completely built from the ground up by players. If a place like that exists, it should be an event to go there, you know? And that actually brings me to my next point. I want little to no fast travel. Hear me out. /home and /back commands are way too powerful. If you could use /home and /back, the sprawling open world they're trying to create would suddenly become trivial to traverse, and that should not be the case. If you could just walk somewhere and then teleport home, there would be little incentive to make paths or chart maps to a meaningful extent, and you'd be robbed of a lot of meaningful, dynamic interactions with players you meet along the way. The only thing the developers have said about this is that it's not a game where you can teleport wherever you want, which is very vague, but it's promising. Now, I know a lot of Factions players are furiously jumping up and down in their seats right now, but I think this is for the best, for the kind of game Bitcraft wants to be, which is a more social and explorative game, and I'm personally all for that. Still speaking of player-driven economy and interactions with people, I want to get more specific and talk about a special kind of dynamic I want to be present in some way. On the website, one little section mentions that you can level up certain skills and become a master of that craft. I want this to be a big thing. I don't think everyone should be able to do everything. You should be encouraged to either take the time to train yourself in a certain skill or cooperate with people and pay people for their services. For example, let's say you're a fisherman and you make a living by selling fish. As you sail further and further into the ocean to get different kinds of fish, the waves get more dangerous to sail upon and you encounter more dangerous creatures. And to compensate for that, you pay someone or trade fish with someone who specializes in building and repairing boats, or maybe just a general woodworking skill. He can repair your boat if it gets damaged, and he can build you a new stronger boat when it comes time. You get what you need, and the woodworker gets what he needs. I want this dynamic to be everywhere. I want it to be a big thing. And seeing how excited the team is about this kind of stuff, I honestly think that's something they're going to go for. Something else they sort of alluded to, but haven't really been specific about, in a similar vein to skill specializations. One of the things I talked about in my factions video that's extremely relevant in this case is that I want there to be some kind of relatively rare pockets of resources that you can build a settlement on and control, such as a mineral deposit, a patch of special plants, or even animals that are harder to come across. These wouldn't be so rare that there's only one on the entire map, but I want there to be resources that have relatively high demand and relatively low supply. Now there are most definitely going to be rare resources you can find, that's just a given with any survival crafting game. My idea is that some of them, instead of just spawning randomly everywhere, would be congregated into controllable land, and this is so they can play a big part in the trading and diplomacy aspect of the game. You see, I want all aspects of the game to be connected in some way, and I don't want trading and diplomacy to feel extremely separated from the survival crafting. And you can do that without my idea, but think of my idea as like the airdrops from a game like PUBG. Yeah, the game works just fine without airdrops, but they throw something really interesting in there that creates opportunities for great player interaction. It draws players closer together and encourages them to trade. Now you may be thinking, what's stopping any faction from just sitting on a resource and not trading with anyone? Well, ideally, it would not be easy to take and maintain control of a resource. It should require frequent and consistent maintenance, and it should take a lot of other resources being put into it. Consider the following, okay? If you set yourself up on a particular mineral deposit, for example, you have to live there, no matter how dangerous the area. You may not have the convenience of being able to easily obtain basic resources that you need to survive, so of course you would trade with people for them, or you would sell and use the money to buy what you need. But since the biggest thing you have is that special resource, you have to give some of it up just to survive. I think this would be a cool mechanic, and it doesn't just have to be the basic necessities you need to survive, of course. You'd still need materials for tools you'll need to mine special ores, or feed special animals, or grow special plants. It'd all be part of a cycle that involves all kinds of players who have all kinds of different resources to trade. I think this would make the game's economy and community really exciting. Now, I've probably said the word resources like 15 times already, but here's one last very important thing relating to resources. Let's be honest, Bitcraft will probably have microtransactions. The website says that everyone who signs up for the pre-alpha will get a limited item, which I assume is cosmetic, which means it'll probably be alongside other cosmetics that can be obtained via microtransactions. My point for this section is to say that if there are microtransactions, they need to be cosmetic only. I've seen someone on the Discord suggest buying resources via microtransactions, like wood and stone. No, absolutely not. Stuff like that would absolutely wreck the player-driven economy and ruin the game, straight up. I'm okay with microtransactions existing as long as it's all cosmetic, and this goes for any possible deluxe editions of the game too, if anything like that happens. Small section, that's just something very important I needed to say with not much elaboration. Now, to close it all off, I'll talk about the bigger picture, the server, and I think I'm gonna rile up some people. I think every few months, maybe twice a year, the server needs to wipe. Everyone loses everything, the world generates all over again, and everyone's on square one. Now that might sound awful to some people because I have so many resources now, I don't want to restart. Well, hear me out. I think it's going to make the game a lot more fun for everyone. First of all, if the developers ever want to add new content in any capacity, they're going to have to reset world generation. Sure, they could just start generating new content on the outskirts of the world, as they generate more and more to fit new players. But that wouldn't feel very fair to people who live near the center of the world, people who have been playing for a long time, and the new kinds of resources to find wouldn't be effectively assimilated into the existing economy. If the world just completely reset and everyone had a fair chance to experience all that new content, it would be a lot more fun for everyone. Now, what if that's not enough for you? I'm going to need to do more convincing. Alright, here you go. Very quickly, we're going to see powerful factions take control. And after a while, having those same factions in control for the entirety of the game's lifespan would be really boring, and it can be really hard to rise up and overtake an impossibly powerful faction. I think that, again, if all of that reset every once in a while and everyone was given a fair shot at making a name for their own faction, it would be a lot more fun and fair for everyone. In conclusion, I guess I can summarize all my points like this. Realistic looking forts and towns. Mutually agreed upon war and raiding. A completely player-driven economy with no server-administrated shop. Little to no fast travel. Skill specializations. Rare-ish resources that could be controlled. No pay-to-win microtransactions, cosmetic only. And occasional server wipes. These are just all the things I've thought about after seeing the trailer and looking at all the information they've given us and looking back at my old factions video to see what I wanted back then. I'm sure that after a little while, I'll have even more things to talk about, but for now, this is what I'm thinking about. At the end of the day, really the most important thing is that I want the interactions with other players to be plentiful and meaningful, and I want the economy and trading to be the biggest part of the game, and I think that'll be the case no matter what. And in any case, I'll definitely be trying it out, and we'll see how all of it plays out. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye!